At this year's Eurobike, there was a media storm when one company announced that it could now recycle bicycle tyres. To help us understand exactly what that announcement meant and why it has been such a milestone, I'm joined by Felix Jahn, the Head of Corporate Social Responsibility at Schwalbe.
You're listening to the BA podcast.
Felix, very warm welcome to the BA podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Felix, back in July, Eurobike was kicking off, and on the very first day, Schwalbe caused something of a sensation. There was an awful lot of activity around your stand. You made a big announcement that you had made a breakthrough in recycling tyres. Can you just give us an idea of how that news was received, and then talk us through the process as you have it at the moment?
Yeah, that was one of the most emotional days in my career. My professional career, definitely. It was very well received. You were there. What was really nice for us was that, all of our customers, be it a dealer, wholesaler, a manufacturer or a consumer, their feedback was very positive, but also the media coverage from the bike-specific industry, but also beyond that was great. And it means a lot to us because it means that people care for the things we do. And that's why it was so special. And, the tire recycling for us, we've been working with bike tires now for 50 years. And we've been wanting to close the loop of this product for decades. We had our first steps in 1993, where we turned old tires into rubber mats. And those rubber mats were used in dealers, workshops and stuff. And they were popular, but essentially it was a downcycling. We don't want to downcycle. We really want to close the loop without creating any additional waste, meaning we take old tires, used tires, and make new Schwalbe products out of them. And after many, many, many years of research and working with different partners, we finally reached our goal.
And just really quickly there, you mentioned two words, and I just want to ask if you could really quickly just describe the difference: recycling and downcycling. What do those two phrases mean? How are they different?
So this is not the official definition by any means. The way I see it from our perspective, take a tube, in a tube, right? And you can downcycle it. This is something I've seen already. You downcycle it in a tube, and the end product is maybe a saddlebag or some sort of packaging product. But what we want to do is we want to recycle, meaning you have a product you're done with, right? It reached its end of its life, and you take it and you break it down into its original components, and then you make a new same product out of it, meaning that this results in using significantly less resources, energy, water. You reduce your CO2 emissions. So there's a real benefit to doing this because, this is always such a cliche, but it is fundamentally true. We only have one planet, so we need to be very responsible with the raw materials we're using and how we manage our sourcing practices. And recycling is one way to counteract this, but of course there's many more things that need to be done.
Can you talk us through the tyre recycling process that you unveiled at Eurobike?
Yeah, so everything starts with the dealers. This is the experience we had with our tube recycling as well, which we introduced in 2015. Everything goes through the dealers, so the end consumer, the cyclist, once they're done with their tires, they can drop it off at their local bike shop, and we've created this. You saw it at our booth. We created this big box, and the dealer just throws the used tires in there. The box fits around 200 tires. Once the box is full, it gets picked up by our logistics partner, and then they drop it off at our recycling partner in West Germany. The recycling partner is called Pyrum Innovations. And there the actual recycling happens. So you add the used tires to a shredding procedure where the end result are the three main components. You have the steel from the bead wire, you've got the rubber granulate, and then you've got textile from the nylon carcass. And the steel and the nylon, we add to different recycling processes. And then the rubber granulate, we add to a process called pyrolysis. It gets very technical now, so I don't know how you want to deep dive into this.
Keep going.
Essentially, a pyrolysis is a thermochemical separation of compounds without oxygen at very high temperatures. So it's not a burning, that's the very important difference. And what we get out of it is a product called recovered, or sometimes also recycled, carbon black. And this is what we use in new Schwalbe products. Carbon black is a very important component in any tire, so be it a truck tire, car tire, or bicycle tire. It has performance properties and quality properties, so you can't really do without carbon black. However, it's also one of the most environmentally unfriendly components in any tire or any product really that is black, because it's usually used to as a pigment. So if you have any other product that is black, it's very likely to have carbon black in it. You get carbon black by burning fossil fuels, so gas and crude oil. And so you can imagine just how much CO2 emissions you get by creating carbon black. And by using recovered carbon black instead, we actually save 80% of CO2 emissions. So there's a real benefit to this recycling scheme.
Felix, is that 80% saving on carbon emissions compared to if you just for the carbon black or for the overall tyre product?
No, so it's an 80% saving compared to us just burning the tyres.
Okay.
Yeah, and so now what we're working on is next year we'll be launching our first product that uses 100% recovered carbon black instead of carbon black. So something we're very excited about. So I'm hoping you'll have me back in a year's time.
Yeah.
So I can talk about that product. And then of course in the medium to long term, what we're now working on is that we eliminate carbon black out of our product portfolio step by step and replacing it with recovered carbon black.
Okay, so are you able currently then to make a tyre from 100% of the materials that you've recovered in this process?
So the only material relevant to us from this process really is the recovered carbon black. And so we'll be presenting the first product that uses 100% recovered carbon black next year. You do get two other products out of the recycling process. That's a pyrolysis gas, which we use to power the process itself. So it runs on its own energy, if you like. The pyrolysis process, which is amazing, because if it was very energy intensive and we'd have to use other energy sources, the CO2 emissions would be fairly high. And then the other product we get is an oil, which is used in the chemical industry as a substitute to crude oil. So again, there's huge benefits to the environment by this process. This oil is actually used in the textile industry, for instance. So you can now buy outdoor pants, for instance, that use oil from this process rather than crude oil. So it doesn't just benefit Schwalbe or the tire industry. There's other industries that also benefit from this process.
And so, sorry, I want to just go back to where you were talking about the fact that the process is almost self-supporting.
It is self-supporting. It's not almost self-supporting. It self-supports itself. It actually creates more, by using the gas, we actually create a little bit more electricity than we need. So it's used in the recycling plant for other things.
So it's almost, you've almost developed a sort of perpetual motion process here, that once you've got it rolling, it will just keep going. You just feed it more and more tyres, and it creates its own energy to resolve it. That's incredible.
So it all happens in a reactor. I think every now and then they have to turn it off so it can cool down and stuff. But essentially, that's what's happening. Yeah.
I mean, all of this is absolutely fantastic. It's an incredible development for the cycling community, but it hasn't come out of the blue. You could be mistaken that if you haven't been following your story carefully or closely up until this point, this is a big announcement and this is something you've been working on the last couple of years, and here it is. Because I think the cycling industry, one of the things that it hasn't done so well, there's been work going on in the background for quite some time now, but people haven't always been aware of it. The public hasn't always been aware of it. Can you talk us through the journey that you've undertaken, the different processes and steps? Because as you look at it now, having made this announcement around the tyres, I can look back at your sustainability page on your website, which we'll put a link to, and it looks like there's a pretty... Now you look back, it seems like you had some stepping stones to get here laid out ready, with inner tube recycling. That was the first thing, and then green compound and green guard and everything else. So could you just talk us through the steps that you've taken to get to where you are today?
It's been a long journey. I would argue it all started in 1983 when the first marathon was launched, which is still our most popular and best-selling tire. It was the first tire that had good puncture protection, that had a long durability, and that people could trust. And I think that shouldn't be downplayed, because I hear these stories all the time, how people travel the world with one set of marathon tires. And this type of durability and listening to the cyclists and giving them something that they need, I think is a very important aspect in acting more responsibly for our industry, for our customers, for our society, and of course for our planet. So those are all things that sort of come into play with the marathon, in my opinion. And then 10 years later, we launched this downcycling scheme where we took back old and used tires and turned them into rubber mats. Essentially, this scheme was a failure because it wasn't what we wanted, but we learned a lot on that journey. We learned how not to do things, which is important. And then in 2015, as you were saying, we launched our inner tube recycling, which was really the first big thing that we communicated, and it was the first time that I could think of where a company in the cycling industry actively took back used products and remanufactured them into new products. And there were so many things that we had to overcome, not just of a technical nature, how can we remanufacture a product, but the logistics behind it. I can't downplay this. The logistics behind it were crazy, and the hurdles we had to overcome were very difficult and challenging. And this remains true with the tire recycling, because you're working with so many different partners. You're working with every single department and division in your company. You have to constantly motivate people and persuade people that this is the right thing. It's very pioneering work. It really is, because usually whoever you talk to, they say, wow, this has never been done before. I've never been asked to do something this way. And that's why it takes a long time. And that's why you have to be really determined if you want to implement something this complex. And that's why it took us many years to get here. It also took a lot of expertise. So without our recycling partner, Pyrum, we would not have been able to do this. We collaborated also with the University of Cologne in order to do more research and development in the field of introducing recovered carbon black in rubber products. So there's a very broad scheme of different fields that we had to operate in, and.
See, but all of this really has come about then because you've been able to collaborate with people outside of Schwalbe. You haven't come up with all these answers on your own. You've worked with other people to get there.
Yeah, essentially. And also, these people usually didn't have the answers, but they were willing to work with us to find the answers. getting a bicycle tire into its components, separate components, so steel, rubber, and nylon, was a journey that took us 25 years or so. Every single recycling partner we talked to said, "Oh no, you can't recycle. You can't shred down bicycle tires because they break our machinery. It's much easier to do that with truck tires and car tires, but with bike tires, they're so small and they break our machinery, and it wasn't designed for this. It's not feasible." Nobody wanted to listen. And our recycling partner now, Pyrum, they were the first people really that sat down with us and said, "Okay, we can't do this right now, but we're willing to develop this together with you." And it was the same thing with the University of Cologne. It was the same thing with many other people that helped us get this done. And that's why I always say, this is an amazing team effort. It truly is a real team effort.
Has this journey then always been about corporate social responsibility under the auspices of sort of sustainability, of having less impact in the planet? But you've said there that this goes all the way back to the 80s, where you introduced the first marathon tire. And back in the 80s, I think we were talking about greenhouse gases, the hole in the ozone layer, a banning of CFCs, but environmental sustainability was not a buzz topic. People weren't doing huge amounts to address it. So when you introduced the marathon tire, was there a belief within Schwalbe that you wanted to reduce your impact, or was it at that stage about delivering a long-lasting high-value item to the consumer, and by default that was sustainable? And then, because now you're talking about a process here to recycle tires that you started over 20 years ago, and you started looking for partners over 20 years ago. And again, over 20 years ago, the cycling industry was not really operating in these areas. It was all about performance. It was about the lightest tire, the least rolling resistance. Those were the things that I believe most people were probably focusing on. So has this journey always been about reducing impact, or has the driver changed over the years? So it started off being a high-value item that presented value in your marathon tires, and gradually that has led to reducing impact and things that we now see really coming under that bracket of corporate social responsibility.
That's a great question. I think the marathon was designed and developed and marketed as a product that is of very high value and quality. And for most products, what this means is that you have a product that is long lasting and thus more sustainable than a product that breaks very quickly. But I think over time, we just wanted to get better in terms of durability, better in terms of puncture protection, availability, and so forth. And essentially what that also meant was that we wanted to get better in terms of our social and ecological responsibility. We are a family-owned enterprise. And I think for us, it was always important to, not just look at profits, but look after the people we work with, look after our communities. And because we're working in this amazing, we're working and operating in this amazing industry that promotes a very healthy and sustainable lifestyle. But as you and I know, the things that happen behind the scenes are often not very environmentally friendly. So that is why I think it is our duty as a company to act as responsibly as possible wherever we can, and that is why we wanted to develop something that people told us for decades was not feasible and not technically possible. And that is why I said in the very beginning, presenting the tire recycling at the Eurobike was one of the most special and emotional days in my professional career.
But it wasn't just that one day, was it? Because I know that you were busy taking interviews and things and fielding questions for the full Eurobike. I think it generated quite a storm, which was fantastic to see. You've touched upon the fact that there have been so many challenges to overcome, and you mentioned the fact that even within Schwalbe there were challenges that you had to overcome and engage with people in a new and different way. But can you give us a little bit of insight into maybe some of the challenges that you had to overcome outside of your own organisation?
Essentially, you have to market this like a new product. What this means is you have to do a lot of explaining. So even with the great dealer network that we have, you have to you have to explain the why, and I think that's fair. But you really have to you can't just say, well, we do this recycling scheme now, so please join us. You have to explain why people should join, why they should participate. There's a lot of currently we have quite a lot of problems with people throwing everything into these boxes I told you about. It's strictly tires, is what we say, but we find all sorts of things there. So that is a big hurdle. Those are really big challenges. The challenge of, because we're used to market tires and tubes, and now we have to sort of find our footing and how we can position ourselves as a company that we don't just sell tires and tubes. We take responsibility beyond that and take back your products. So create more awareness with the consumers is something that is a big obstacle, because as you were saying, I think with the marathon, a lot of people understand, okay, this is a great tire for commuting. This is a great tire if I don't want any punctures, if safety is big on my list, and your other performance aspects like low rolling resistance and so forth. But this is a whole different field, and creating awareness and make people, and you asked earlier, Felix, please explain recycling and downcycling. This is something that we have to do on a daily basis, and it's a challenge, but it's also very rewarding. I talk to so many local bike shops now that have told me, Felix, we used to just sell these tires to the cement factory down the road where they would burn them, but now we can participate in your scheme and help do our little bit in terms of acting more responsibly, and that means a lot.
Because it's not just your own tires that you're taking back, is it?
No, we said from the very beginning, if we're going to do this, we're going to take back all the brands, even though that means the challenges are greater. We did not want to discriminate with, it doesn't matter what labels on the tire. What matters is that something that was classified as waste can now be used in the production of new products.
And is that the same for the inner tube recycling scheme as well?
That's correct. So we take back all tubes, recycle them, and reuse them in our Schwalbe tubes. So all Schwalbe standard tubes are made out of 20% recycled content, and just using recycled content in our tube recycling means that we use 80% less energy. All transport emissions already included. So there's also a real benefit to that.
Using 20% recovered content enables you to make an 80% saving.
In energy, yeah.
In energy. That's pretty incredible.
Compared to using virgin material. Yeah.
I suppose then that the next question has to be, because you're one of the few tire companies that only makes bicycle tires. You don't make any other tires. Presumably that means that within the tire industry, you are a relatively small business. How come it's you that developed this, and why didn't other people do it?
That's a question I ask myself every day. It's crazy. I don't want to call names now for our competitors, because I'm sure there's many reasons. But I think one of our core strengths is we are focused on the cycling industry. It's the industry we operate in. We offer tires and tubes, and that is it. Sounds very simple, but I think it's a very important factor. Everyone here is a cyclist. We're fanatics when it comes to cycling. I grew up just like many other people here. I grew up with cycling, so it's an integral part of our lives. And as I said before, because we're a family-owned business, the decision-making here is a lot quicker. When we found out that there's potentially a way to recycle used tires, we just went with it, knowing fully well that it'll cost a lot of money, that it'll take a lot of time, that it'll drive people crazy. But we went with it because we fully believe that it's the right thing to do, and we were not looking for an instant return on investment. And I think that's why we were successful in implementing it.
We mentioned, we've talked very quickly about the energy saving when you're using 20% recycled content in your inner tubes. How does the cost compare though, in terms of, is it more expensive for you to recycle, to use that 20% recycled content as compared to just using 100% virgin material? Is there a cost penalty at the moment for you doing this?
So essentially, this is also a sign of us being a family-owned business. Our controlling, our board just said, just get it done, you guys. It's the right thing to do. The costs are an important factor, but they're not the dominating part of this decision. But if I'm not totally mistaken, I think there is a slight cost penalty to all of this, yeah, for the tube recycling.
You've received a virgin tube, I suppose, or a tube made from virgin materials through your recycling scheme. You've turned it into a new new inner tube, sorry. And you know that it's got 20% material, and then 6 months later, that inner tube comes back to you via the recycling scheme. Can you recycle it again? How many times can you then recycle that inner tube before you end up with an unusable product?
It's a great question, and it's very valid. We were talking earlier about how we take back all the tubes and all the tires. And I mentioned that there is a real challenge to it. And the challenge is, with the Schwalbe products, we know what's in them, right? So it's significantly easier to recycle those. However, we made the decision that we're going to take back all of the tires and all of the tubes. And the challenge is that we don't know what our competitors are using. If we only took back Schwalbe tubes, the recycled content of our standard tubes would be higher. But we don't do it. So we settle with the 20%. Because we still want our tubes to be of a very high quality. And we, after many tests, found that 20% is sort of the benchmark at the moment. So you don't just take, say, a tube X and all of it is then used completely in a new tube, right? Because it's shredded and then small bits are then used in one tube and small other particles used in another tube. None of it gets wasted, but it's distributed. And that initial tube also had 20% content, 80% virgin material. So to get to a stage where you cannot recycle the tube is currently very unlikely, and I don't see it happening.
But at the moment, the tyre recycling that you outlined is currently only available in Germany. Is that correct?
Yes, and that is due to the logistical challenges that we talked about earlier. It is absolutely our goal to offer this system in other countries.
And when do you think it might be available in the UK? Have you got any sort of timeline?
The difficulty at the moment is that the UK is no longer part of the EU. So it's already it's an even bigger challenge now. But I'm positive that we are going to overcome it, especially once, as you know, Alec, regulation from the different governments is getting strict and stricter in terms of circular economy. So I'm hoping that will be a benefit for us, so that the hurdles will be reduced. I cannot tell you a clear timeline, but in the near future is what I can tell you. In the not too distant future.
What are the chances then of you rolling out, rather than moving the tyres around? What is the possibility of more of your recycling facilities appearing in different regions outside of the one that you already have in Germany?
Well, it's not our recycling plant, right? It's the recycling plant of our partner, Pyrum Innovations. So their business is growing, as you can imagine. And I know that they have plans for expansion, but in what way we can use their other facilities, which are not completed yet, by the way, remains to be seen. But of course, that would make hurdles significantly easier to overcome. So this is as you can tell by my answers, we've worked incredibly hard to get to where we are right now, but it's very clear it's just the first step in the right direction. We'll have to take many more steps to be perfect, if you like. All I can say is I'm not satisfied with just offering this system in Germany, and it's not what we want. It's just where we started, and we'll get to other countries and other markets as soon as we can, as soon as it is possible.
It's interesting you say that you're not satisfied. You're not where you've arrived to today. You're still not satisfied, which is incredible to hear, because this is such a significant milestone to have reached already. That's incredible. What's going to be the next challenge then, beyond rolling this out? Where do you see the next big challenge for first of all for Schwalbe, and then for the cycling industry?
So in terms of our tire recycling, there's two big challenges. One is offering the system in other countries, for sure. The second one is using the recovered carbon black in as many of our products as possible. As I said, next year we'll be showcasing our first Schwalbe product made out of 100% recycled carbon black. But of course, again, that'll only be a first step, and we're not satisfied, right? We want to use it in as many of our products, in all of our products eventually. So that'll be the big challenge, because more research and development is needed for that. And actually, my colleague Sebastian, who's our recycling manager, he's doing his PhD in this field now. So it's very promising. It's very exciting, and it's pioneering work that is happening. And I'm really excited to see what's happening, what's coming next. For the industry, there's so many challenges. Implementing a circular economy, I think, for us is essential. We must move away from the linear economy, from just buying stuff and throwing it away once you're done with it, because it's such a massive waste of resources, and it must end soon. And what I'm seeing almost everywhere now in the cycling industry is that people are beginning to ask the right questions, and they're thinking of ways of how they can get better. The tire and tube, they're just two components on a bike made out of 200 different parts. So to find ways to reintroduce all of these different components and parts into new cycles it's going to be a long journey. And if we work together, we'll get there faster and more efficiently, and it'll be better for everyone, for the cyclists, for the cycling industry, for the different companies in the industry. And that is why, I'm so happy to see all of these different companies now collaborating. You really do see it, as you know, Alec. But collaboration needs to intensify if we want to see results soon,
Everything that we've talked about at the moment has been looking at your recycling schemes for inner tubes and for tyres. Your role, you've talked about the fact that you have a head of recycling. You're not the head of recycling. You're the head of corporate social responsibility, and that encompasses more than just reducing the impact of your products. It goes on. There's the social side of that as well. I'm just wondering if you can just talk through a little bit about the other end of the supply chain, if you like, where your products stem from in the very first place with rubber.
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's that's it, right? We were talking about product life cycles there, but it all starts for us anyway, in Indonesia, where we source our natural rubber from. Natural rubber is a very important ingredient in tires as well as tubes. And
because at the moment we're not talking about recycled rubber, are we? You're not recycling rubber, you're recycling the carbon black.
Well, actually, you probably have heard of our Green Guard, which is made out of a third of recycled materials, as well as so the Green Guard is a punch protection. Sorry, I think all day about tires, so Green Guard is something that doesn't need to be explained in my world. As well as the green compound, where all polymers used are of recycled or renewable nature. But yeah, so natural rubber is really important in tires. You do have synthetic rubber too, but natural rubber is really important in our products. And the sourcing of natural rubber has been a black box for many years for many industries, virtually all industries. The most important industries for natural rubber, of course, is the tire industry, and we are part of the tire industry. But as you can imagine, Schwalbe plays a very minor role in the overall tire industry because we only focus on bicycle tires. Still, what we wanted to do was to engage more strongly with the people in the beginning of our value chain. And those are the farmers and tappers of natural rubber. So in 2020, we started working with the Fair Rubber NGO. Fair Rubber is essentially a fair trade organization for natural rubber. And we as a company pay a premium for every kilogram of dried natural rubber that we buy of the farmers and tappers. And then they can use this to improve their living standards. That is one side, that is a real benefit. But also we found that through engaging strongly with the people in the beginning of our value chain, we create a better understanding of how this very important material is sourced and what the circumstances are around the plantations and so forth. And for us, it's a huge advantage that our factories in Indonesia, the nearest plantation is just about a 2 hours drive away. So there's a real benefit for us. And through working together so closely with Fair Rubber, we've just been able to engage on a much more active base with the rubbers and the farmers and tappers of natural rubber.
What were the advantages of working with our organisation?
There's many advantages. It's a small organization filled with people that are very passionate about the subject. So they all have very strong fair trade backgrounds, and they know the situations. They know the difficulties that farmers and tappers have to face. So just to be able to work together with them and solving issues, it's been very rewarding because they really get through to the people, and you can realize projects much quicker and faster with them. And that's been something that we appreciated from the very beginning. We were first in contact with them in 2019, and then a year later we already had Schwalbe products using fair trade natural rubber.
So did you find that working with Fair Rubber helped you accelerate what you were doing and gave you more confidence that you were doing the right thing? And then on top of that, did it also help consumers feel confident about what you were doing?
I mean, it just threw some light on some of the issues in the rubber supply chain, and I think for consumers to see that, this is a tire that uses fair rubber, that is great. Also goes to show that there's still work to be done so that all tires in the future use fair trade natural rubber. Yeah, I think for us, we have a very strong relationship with our suppliers, our manufacturing partner, Hunga, another Korean family-owned business. And to now have that level of appreciation also for the people in the beginning of our value chain, I think it's just really important because you get also not just a better understanding of the people and of the processes and of the chain, of the supply chain, but you receive a better understanding and appreciation for your product because it's been sourced well,
You have an unusual amount of oversight in your entire process, from the sourcing of your critical material, rubber, natural rubber, now all the way through to recovering products at end of life, making sure that those products are dealt with responsibly. And a lot of that process is in scope 3. How have you been able to achieve that? And do you think other people could replicate it?
Persistency, not giving up. It's not like, we just had this idea and then 1 week later we reached our goal. I think when you start asking the right questions and you start communicating with the right people, I think you can get a lot done. You need to, once you won people over that this is the way to go and it's the right thing to do, you'll be surprised at the level of participation and community almost you create. For me, it's always been very emotional because you learn more about all the processes and you understand that we as a company, we must act responsibly, not just for the planet and for the environment and for the next generations, but also for the people right now that come into contact with our products directly or indirectly, be it at the beginning of the supply chain or at the very end or in the recycling process. I said before that we want to take responsibility for our products at the end of their lives. But this must also mean that we take responsibility for everything that happens before that, right? Does that make sense? And again, it's a really long journey, and we've took some steps in the right direction, but of course we can still improve.
Obviously, I attended Eurobike this year for the Bicycle Association, but in the roles that I sit on with CIE and Conaby in the Sustainability Expert Working Group, alongside yourself, of course. And we were really pleased for the CIE and Conaby group because we had our talk slot right at the very beginning. It was the very first thing that was being talked about at Eurobike was sustainability and what the cycling industry was doing about it, which was an incredible first step. Obviously, you weren't able to be part of that panel because you had this announcement to make as well. And then afterwards, Louisa from Brompton and myself headed over to speak to you. And, we had to wait pretty much the full day before we got a chance. You were just flat out talking with people. However, everybody that we spoke to at the Schwalbe stand knew what was going on and understood the process and were fully engaged. And we were actually shown around, before we had a chance to speak to you, by Sean. So Sean from the US, Schwalbe US, showed us around. And, I certainly don't want to trivialize what he did, but he was evangelical about what had been achieved, the amount of work that had gone in order to do it. It wasn't just a department within Schwalbe dealing with this. This is something everybody has bought into. Have you taken active steps to get everybody involved and to start thinking about sort of traditional CSR roles? Or is it interest that they've brought with them from outside? Or, have you taken an active measure to cultivate that within the organisation? And if so, what did you do that other people might be able to learn from?
It was a complete team effort. It really was a team. It was everybody at Schwalbe helped to develop this recycling scheme. Everybody. I cannot stress this enough. The people in customer support, in the IT, in the logistics department, in the warehouse, our salespeople, especially the sales reps, talking to all of the bike dealers. I mean, the list goes on. And I think that is why eventually everybody was just won over by this, right? Because it's such a great achievement. And I also had this feeling this year at the Eurobike that people were really proud to demonstrate what we had been doing for the past few years, behind the curtain, if you like. And to lift that curtain and show the world our tire recycling system meant a lot to everyone, I hope. And but also we did a lot of training and explaining. So as I was saying before, one of the challenges still is that we need to explain and teach the people, the dealers mainly, and consumers about the system so that they understand what recycling means. You're not just throwing something away. Waste is turned into a valuable raw material. And we did this through a lot of communication with the different departments, with our subsidiaries abroad. We created a lot of informational content for everybody. But, because everybody knew that this was coming. So I think there was a lot of interest in general for this system.
But there were also a lot of retailers, dealers, distributors who were coming to your stand to find out more and to find out how they could be involved. Were you getting people trying to sign up to the scheme there and then? And then, that was the trade days. With the public opening day, how did the public respond to this?
Yes, essentially, that is what happened. We had all of our sales reps at the stand, and dealers were really interested, and a lot of them just asked questions, how does this work? What do I have to do? What are the logistics? But also some people, instantly they sign up then and there, and they must now already have the first boxes and collecting used tires. So It was a mixture of everything, if you like. But there was a lot of interest. And actually now just before this, I talked to our customer support center, and they've been saying that recently a lot of the calls they receive and emails are tire recycling related, which is great. And on the consumer days, so that was Saturday and Sunday, there was definitely less traffic. I thought that this year's Eurobike was a massive success for the industry. But the weekend, I wouldn't say it was quiet, but as you know, the show was huge. And a lot of the end consumers were outside, where you could try different bikes and different vehicles. So we had less traffic in all of the halls. However, that being said, still a lot of the questions that we received were about the tire recycling. Mainly the question was, what has been happening with the tires prior to Eurobike? The answer is it's been burned. They've been burned. And secondly, where is my nearest dealer? So again, you could just tell that people were really interested, but people also they were surprised that there has been no tire recycling system up to this day. They thought, I thought, you've been doing this for years, which illustrates the urgency of the matter, in my opinion.
I think that's a really nice way of phrasing it. We'll put a pencil marker in the diary for around next year's Eurobike, when we find out all about the new tyre with 100% carbon black from recycled content that you've gathered from within Europe for now, but hopefully within UK soon as well.
That'll be it's a very special day, because it's I used to work in product management, so it's a tire I developed with 2 other colleagues of mine. So it'll be pretty cool.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been absolutely great to hear what you have achieved and all of the other steps that you've taken on that journey as well. So thank you for joining us on the BA podcast.
Thank you for having me.
That's all we have time for in this episode of the BA podcast. As usual, we'll put the links to everything we've discussed in the episode description, or you can head over to our website at www.bicycleassociation.org.uk, where you can also find out how to become a member. If there is a topic that you think we should be exploring here on the podcast, please drop us an email at media@bicycleassociation.org.uk, or use our Twitter handle at bicycleassoc. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to click subscribe before you go. But from me and everybody here at the Bicycle Association, bye for now.